Good evening, everyone. I think you can hear me now. And welcome, especially to the friends and family of our baptism candidates. Brinny and I are both so excited and feel really privileged and honoured to be able to baptise these awesome young guys this evening and to be an integral part of this step on their journey. So, what is baptism? Some of you will have been here previously for one of our baptism services or one of our evening services, and you'll have heard Lorna, who was up earlier, or Brinny, talk about what baptism is and why we baptize people. So I'm not going into too much detail about that this evening, but they're obviously both here. If you do have any further questions, feel free to ask them. So, but in brief, first and foremost, baptism is a public declaration of faith. When someone chooses to be baptized, they're making a bold statement about their commitment to follow God and to live his kingdom values here on earth. And it symbolizes the individual's decision to leave behind their old ways of life and embrace a new identity as a member of God's family. The act of immersion, of going under the water, follows Jesus' model of the way to experience life in all its fullest and represents a spiritual death and rebirth, a cleansing of the old self, an emergence of a new creation. But the topic I want to delve into today is something that might feel like it prevents us from taking that step of faith to be baptized and to publicly confess that we want to follow Jesus. Doubt. Boom, boom, boom. So doubt is often seen as a stumbling block, a challenge to our beliefs, if we call ourselves a Christian already, and a reason why we might discount ourselves from being a follower of Jesus if we haven't yet made that commitment. Often I've heard people express guilt about having doubts and a sense that they're somehow failing as being a Christian. However, I and many other wise and learned theologians, spiritual gurus, and even ChatGPT, believe that doubt is not the enemy of faith. Rather, it's an integral element of faith that strengthens and refines our beliefs. Doubt, when confronted earnestly, can deepen our understanding of our faith and can actually bring us closer to God. This can seem like a confusing paradox, that our doubt in something could actually bring us closer to it. So how can this be true? Our faith is often strengthened by our doubts very simply because we ask questions and we seek answers. We certainly love asking questions about life and faith here at Epsom Vineyard, and it's a particular feature of our youth sessions in EV Youth for precisely that reason. We don't want to create clones who call themselves Christians purely based on family history or tradition, or even because they belong to a particularly awesome youth group. But rather, we aim to support individuals to step on a journey of faith with all its ups and downs, with its faith highs like getting baptized or going to youth festivals or conferences, and its lows like struggling with depression, stress, anxiety, or wrestling with what faith looks like in dark times or places. Creativity flourishes, not in certainty, but in questions. Science and maths couldn't exist without questions. So why would we expect faith to come with no questions? And why do these questions even get labelled as doubt? As if faith could ever exist in a vacuum of certainty that's incompatible with the mystery of life itself. One of the most famous current theologians, that's really hard to say, is a man called N.T. Wright. Many of you will have heard of him. And he likens the inseparable relationship of faith and doubt to that of grief and love. Grief cannot exist unless you have loved and lost. And just like we may be afraid of and resist grief, our faith can feel vulnerable when doubt and questions kick in. So, how did Jesus respond to doubt? There are many instances in the Bible when Jesus encounters and interacts with the doubts of others. including the doubts of some of his closest followers and friends. And how does he respond? Always with kindness, compassion, understanding, and love. One of his closest friends and biggest doubters, who is now unfortunately labelled for life as Doubting Thomas, wasn't just content to take other people's word for it when they told him that they'd seen Jesus risen from the dead. He wanted to experience the risen Christ for himself. This story appears in the Bible in John 20, verses 24 to 29, which is going to come up behind me. Now Thomas, one of the 12, was not with the disciples when Jesus came. So the other disciples told him, "We've seen the Lord." But he said to them, "Unless I see the nail marks in his hands and put my finger where the nails were and put my hand into his side, I will not believe." A week later, his disciples were in the house again, and Thomas was with them. Though the doors were locked, Jesus came in and stood among them and said, "Peace be with you." Then he said to Thomas, "Put your finger here. See my hands. Reach out your hand and put it into my side. Stop doubting and believe." Thomas said to him, "My Lord and my God." Then Jesus told him, "Because you have seen me, you have believed. Blessed are those who have not seen and yet have believed." When Thomas encounters the risen Christ, Jesus doesn't scold him for his doubt. Instead, he blesses him with peace and invites Thomas to touch his wounds, to connect with him and believe him and know him. In the last line of that passage, Jesus steps outside of time to speak to us here today. And he calls us blessed. Blessed because we believe, even though we haven't seen the physical risen Jesus with our own eyes. But just like in life or work or study in school or college or university, you may have often found that when you work something out and you get to an answer and you believe it, you're often rewarded with 3 more questions. And so it is with faith. When you find yourself, whether for the first or for the 100th time, saying, "Yes, I really do believe in Jesus. I really do believe he lived and he died for me and that God raised him from the dead," you can expect that to be fairly swiftly followed by a whole lot more questions. And for these guys here today who have made that choice to follow Jesus and to give their lives in the faith of being transformed by Jesus and are coming here today to be baptized in front of all of us as witnesses from friends, family, and ultimately God's family, there will be struggles. There will be challenges in life. They will still get things wrong, mess up, say the wrong thing, be human. And they certainly will have questions and doubts along the way. But they can do all of this safe in the knowledge that their Father in heaven knows them and loves them and wants to walk with them, both in the celebration and in the struggle. And that's where we come in. To welcome the doubts, to welcome the questions, to support them in the difficult times, and to turn our own questions and doubts into opportunities for conversations with each other and with God as we turn our ponderings into prayers. So without further ado, I would love to welcome to the stage Noah.